I love power-ups. I love Naruto and everything that that series has to offer. And while I can't say that I love Boruto, I definitely do find it an okay and somewhat enjoyable series. The mix of these three things should lead me to love the recent development in the Boruto anime. Obviously, for all that decided to click on this video, you know that Naruto finally used Baryon Mode within the anime and his fight versus Ishiki. And while usually I would be super hype about any new power-up for Naruto to be badass and be contextually super strong again, I have a problem with Baryon Mode. So let's talk about it. So before I get into arguably the biggest problems with the Baryon Mode's form and introduction, I would first like to get something off of my chest that I've been kind of holding in for a while, basically ever since the mode was shown in the manga. Baryon Mode's design sucks. Okay, that isn't necessarily the fairest thing to say. The design and general aesthetic of the form is fine, especially when it comes to the anime. I think that Naruto's new form doesn't look completely disgusting or horrendous by any means. In the manga in particular, I will say that I'm not a fan, and even in the anime, I think there's much to be desired when it comes to this form and its presentation. In comparison to almost every other Naruto form in both, Naruto's depiction of KCM, Sage Mode, KCM2, Six Path Sage Mode, and even the depiction of it in Boruto, I just think that this one is the weakest visually. The enhancement of the whiskers on Naruto's face are cool in concept, and the tails on Naruto's back, representing this sort of complete fusion between Kurama and Naruto, is a really cool idea. However, in terms of execution, I'm really just not a fan of how it looks. Keep in mind, my take on the design is completely subjective and honestly not that serious in the grand scheme of things. If Naruto's form looking bad was the only gripe I had with Baryon Mode, I wouldn't even be making this video. There are some very cool shots of the form, and honestly this is a very small speck in comparison to the larger issue that I take up when it comes to the form and its introduction in the series. Once again, I'd like to quickly preface, this fight and Baryon Mode has some cool scenes. This fight is a very good one, and it certainly is badass for Naruto. I don't have any qualms with how cool the fight is, and I'd like to make it clear that regardless of my feelings on the form itself, I don't take issue with the conflict and fight between Ishiki and Naruto. With all this being said, where the fuck was Baryon Mode before this? I understand if Kurama would not like to resort to this form earlier because of how drastic the consequences are. That is completely understandable. The problem that I take up with it is the fact that at no point Kurama even so much as hints at the fact that Naruto and him could have used this ability. I'm honestly not even saying that Kurama has to outright tell Naruto that it is possible to defeat Ishiki using this form. But what I am saying is that some sort of dialogue or maybe even inner monologue that indicated that he had some way to deal with him or surpass him in power would have been greatly appreciated to the buildup of such an impactful form. Feel free to correct me if I am wrong, but considering the fact that I kind of reread and kind of blitzed through some of the Boruto manga in order to make sure that I didn't miss anything, there isn't really any point in the series where Kurama so much as thinks about using Baryon Mode or some sort of hidden power-up in order to gain the upper hand against such a powerful foe. A form of this magnitude and importance to moving the story of Boruto forward isn't one that I think can simply be brushed aside as a power-up that doesn't require the proper narrative build-up to it. Imagine for a second that Naruto pulled back up to the Leaf Village to fight Pain, and he just whips out Sage Mode. No prior build-up, nothing to show that he's been working towards the form, and nothing that even implied that he was going to get a new power-up in the first place. The impact of Sage Mode, one of the coolest transformations in the series by the way, would drop exponentially. Very powerful and impactful moments or forms require the proper maintenance and steps in order to assure that it doesn't turn out to fall flat. Unfortunately, Baryon Mode to me didn't take the proper procedure when it comes to revealing it in a way that is super cool or engaging outside of the moment that it's shown. This may be completely subjective to me, so take this part with a little bit of a grain of salt. But when it was pulled out, it is undeniably cool and something that had me excited, especially when I first saw it in the manga. But I know for a fact that in the long run, it won't stick in my mind whatsoever outside of something for power scaling purposes. And honestly, why should it? It's a form that is pulled out once, that wasn't built up to in any way, and while the ability is cool, it doesn't last long with its impact. I can't speak to the preparation that Ikimoto took as an author when considering this transformation's importance to the fight against Ishiki, but from an outside perspective, solely from the perspective of a viewer, it looks as if Baryon Mode was something that was come up with in the spur of the moment in order to overcome the almost impregnable defenses of Ishiki Otsutsuki. Because of the unexpected reveal that is only built up to in the span of, in the manga, 1.5 chapters at best, and in the anime about 1 episode, the form is one that is very disappointing and weak in its influence on me and many other fans of the Naruto franchise. For all of those unconvinced, let me ask you this. To you, in your personal opinion, is Baryon Mode better than or even equal to any Naruto form previously established in Naruto, Naruto Shippuden, or Boruto? No. I don't even think that this form is nearly as good as something like Boroshiki's form, because it has been foreshadowed since the Naruto and Sasuke versus Momoshiki fight. We actually get to see foreshadowing that Momoshiki would possibly be taking over Boruto's body by his warning and through the fact that after the encounter, Boruto obtains karma, which is an obvious remnant of the Otsutsuki power. Essentially, this makes Boruto unleashing Momoshiki's power an inevitability rather than a power-up that seems to come out of nowhere and be a random ass pull. Adding to the myriad of problems that I have with this ability, the conclusion to this form is pretty shit. Personally, I'm not a fan of new forms getting completely dookied on in the same moment that they appear in myself, solely because I think that it detracts from the appeal of the form in the first place. I get that this was important and integral to gaining the advantage, but it's so deflating to see Naruto still lose in a battle to Ishiki even after gaining an explosive power-up to Baryon Mode. To me, it would be almost as if, like, imagine Super Saiyan Goku fighting Frieza, gaining the Super Saiyan transformation, going through all of that turmoil and development, only to then lose to Frieza after gaining the form. It drains the impact from it. It drains the badassery, and it drains the very small amount of cool factor that the mode has, and just throws it away in order to, you know, make the fight stretch out or give character development to someone else, which in and of itself isn't horrible. I just don't like the fact that a new power-up that wasn't built up to before this was used in order to push the narrative forward. Now, the conclusion to this form isn't nearly as big of a drawback as the form actually just popping into existence out of nowhere, but to say that I wasn't disappointed with Naruto's short-lived good performance would be a lie. The form itself is powerful and has some great hacks. The ability to chip off someone else's soul by touching them and hitting them with your own attacks is pretty cool. It's a pretty strong one. But for a manga that I usually have very few genuine problems with, Baryon Mode is a very disappointing and truly upsetting showing for a form that is so important to the endgame of the Ishiki conflict. Now, because of the nature of this video and because a lot of people are going to be really hyped about the new form and maybe look at me as someone who's trying to rain on their parade talking about the negatives, it's inevitable that people will have major problems with the takes presented in this video, and I'm completely fine with that. Feel free to drop them down in the comments. If you think I'm wrong, right, or just want to yell at me, go right ahead. For all of you that did enjoy the video and want to see more Boruto content on the channel, hopefully positive ones in the future, consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss out on more potential Boruto videos. Links to similar content and videos will be in the description, cards, and end screens for you guys to enjoy at your own leisure. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, this is Broken Ronin, signing off.